One of the metrics that we didn't discuss on the Premier League edition was passes into the final third. And that's predominantly by players, who are going to be playing in defence or in defensive midfield. Those players who are making those expansive, progressive passes to try and create something. The ball that is passed to the assist maker, essentially. And the reason I mentioned Sassuolo earlier, when Steve brought that team up, was that Manuel Locatelli has the most successful passes into the final third in Serie A this season with 198, which FBref.com, they define a pass into the final third as completed passes that enter the third of the pitch closest to the opposition goal, which is very self-explanatory, very straightforward. I did a little bit of watching of Locatelli for something different a little while ago, and I mean, I'd kind of he hadn't dropped off my radar because he's a prominent Serie A player, but since he'd broken through at Milan and then went to Sassuolo, I thought that was kind of a bit of a retrograde move for him. But no, Sassuolo have been really good these past few years, and I think Locatelli's been a big reason for that.
Yeah, as we've seen covering the under-21 Euros and things like that, a lot of the players in that team are Sassuolo academy graduates or products. So the club is proving that they can, develop players incredibly. And Locatelli is one of those guys that since he arrived from Milan, he's become not completely different, but he's just become so much more confident, so much more able to control games, set the pace. And he is, I think, one of the absolutely most slept on midfielders in Europe, not even in just in Serie A. And I think there's going to be a big time war over his services in the summer. I think, well, Juventus are 100% interested in him. I think Manchester City are pretty keen as well from some of the rumors that I've seen. But yeah, his game has just got everything. His passing range is huge. And you're talking about the completed passes in the final third of the pitch. I think sometimes you really need to consider whether these are someone that's making a lot of passes out wide, whether they're central. Because if you've got someone that can obviously make those passes into central areas that are typically more damaging, and that's something that Locatelli is fantastic at, then it really increases their quality. And for someone that plays so deep in midfield, he creates a lot of chances. His expected assists is quite high, considering that he's playing that regista role, sitting deep in midfield. Can hit any pass possible. Pretty mobile for a big guy, and defensively, can marshal as a six really well. He is one of my absolute favorites at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what you mentioned there in terms of where this player in particular is passing, whether it's out wide or into the central areas, we could delve into the more advanced metrics of things such as expected threat and stuff like that. And I think Manuel Locatelli would probably rank quite highly in those regards because of where he's playing these passes into. If you're getting balls into feet in the half spaces, in the area just between the lines in front of the opposition's penalty area, that's pretty much you're within shooting territory from there. So obviously, yeah, I can see where you're saying about the expected assists value being quite high for a regista. But how much importance would you place on this as a metric, Steve, in terms of passes into the final third? Because we've got for FBref on their website. If you haven't checked that out, please do, because it's excellent resource. But if anybody hadn't seen, there's passes into the final third, passes into the penalty area, crosses into the penalty area. There's a lots of sort of different discernments in terms of how these passes have been categorized. Obviously, passes into the box, completed passes into the penalty area are going to be of greater value, but they're inherently going to be made by players who are playing further up the pitch. Your number 10s, your wingers, your more advanced central midfielders. So, I mean, how much importance do you place on passes into the final third?
Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't care about them really at all for a attacking midfielder or a winger or a striker or anything like that. It wouldn't be a metric that I probably go to. Is they're the passes they're supposed to be making. That's where they're playing. But I think for a deep lying playmaker, a creative playmaker from deep, a centre back, even potentially, a right back, like someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold, wouldn't surprise me if his pass into the final third are off the charts high. Um, so I think, yeah, someone playing in Locatelli's position, it's quite an important statistic, because it's really showing their ability to progress to play forward and be direct. So yeah, I think always need to really be thinking about statistics and contextualizing them for a player's role, a player's position, all these different little things, rather than just trying to compare, two players playing in different positions or doing completely different things, and then comparing them with one metric when, there's always going to be different factors that affect someone's ability to perform well in a certain metric.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's essentially what I was trying to gauge, trying to sort of vocalize there in my little bit. But yeah, essentially, we're not saying that just because a player who is a striker doesn't make too many passes into the final third, that doesn't make them a good player. It's because they're already in the final third more often than not, so they're not going to rank highly in terms of that metric. So it would, yeah, it's only appropriate for players in certain positions, to judge them based on that metric, the same as passes into the penalty area, all that sort of thing. That yeah, it's important to contextualize, as Steve says. But in terms of, is there anything in terms of Locatelli? Is there anything that you dislike potentially about his game? Is he a player that we're going to be seeing at Champions League level anytime soon? Because obviously, if you've gone from Milan to Sassuolo, is there going to be some sort of redemption arc where he returns to a Champions League quality club? Or are we going to see a late charge from Sassuolo? I mean, unlikely this season, but in future campaigns.
Well, in terms of weaknesses, I think the one thing that's hard to gauge because it's not really his role, but it might be important in um, a more dominant team, is his ability to kind of step out of that position in midfield and press a bit higher, and then kind of just press deeper into the final third and camp himself in there and control the game from that position. Um, so that would probably be, it's not even, I wouldn't say a weakness. It's just something we kind of don't get to see as much from the role that he currently plays. Um, but yeah, in terms of where he's going to end up, I think he's definitely ready for that Champions League level. He would stroll into Juventus's midfield, for example, and probably be the best of all of them. So, 100%, yeah, ready for that level, in my opinion.
Would you be happy if you've signed him in the summer then?
Oh, 100%. Yes. As I said before, I think he's one of the most slept on players, slept on midfielders in the whole of Europe. So I think he could walk into Juventus' midfield. I think he'd do well at Man City. I think he'd be a player that Pep would absolutely love to have. So, yeah, he's ready.